The first day. The smell of fresh paint, sharp, hopeful, lingered in the air as Allison Brooks pushed open the door to room 212. Her heart thudded, not from nerves exactly, but something electric, the anticipation of beginnings. This was her 5th year teaching, but her first at Franklin High, a sprawling public school in the city's heart where the hallways buzzed morning and afternoon with 1,000 stories in motion. Allison paused at the threshold, taking it all in. Sunlight streamed across battered desks, the soft squeak of sneakers echoed from somewhere down the hall, and a bright, lopsided, "Welcome, Miss Brooks" poster clung to the whiteboard, a student's attempt at warmth, or perhaps a warning. Beneath the cheery letters, faint pen marks revealed an earlier message now partially erased. R.I.P. Mrs. Carson. She remembered the hasty introduction in the office, the previous teacher's sudden exit, her nervous glances. Whatever happened, it had left a mark. Her students filtered in clumps, some quiet, heads down and wary, others noisy, tossing packs onto desks, laughter bouncing off the cinder block walls. Allison greeted them, "Good morning," but got mostly shrugs or blank stares in return. It was fine. She knew this dance. Midway into roll call, a boy lounged in after the bell, sneakers untied, cell phone in hand. The class seemed to pivot around him, falling quiet. He flopped into a seat at the back, grinning in a way that managed to be both lazy and defiant. "You must be Ethan," Allison said, marking her roster. His smirk widened. "Guess I must, Miss Brooks," he replied. His friend snickered, sizing her up. Despite herself, Allison smiled, bemused. She'd heard every version of the problem kid legend at previous schools, and Ethan fit the mold. 2 bright eyes, easy insolence. The trick, she knew, was never to flinch. As she began the syllabus, Allison scanned the room. She caught glimpses, a girl chewing her nails raw, eyeing Ethan with something like dread. 2 boys traded notes behind upraised textbooks. Even in this short time, bonds of loyalty and power were already visible, or maybe just alliances of survival. Every lesson Allison attempted, there was Ethan, a constant counterpoint, always watching, always plotting with his quick, knowing grin. His circle of friends thrived on his lead, mocking under their breath, disrupting with a practiced, almost artful energy designed to unsettle. On Wednesday, Allison came prepared. She wrote a quotation on the board. "The arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends toward justice." She asked for reactions. Most students just stared blankly. A few snickered. As she paced the aisles, Ethan's hand shot up, slow, exaggerated. "Justice?" He grinned. "So if Mr. Torres gets busted for cheating, but his friend covers for him, that means he'll still get what's coming, right, Miss Brooks?" His tone was too sharp, too pointed. The room fell silent, with only his friend's stifled laughter as background noise. Allison met his gaze. "That's one way to look at it, Ethan. But justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's fixing what's broken, even if it takes a long time." He leaned back, arms crossed, unimpressed. Later, when she turned to help another student, a paper airplane whizzed past her face and landed at the feet of Anna, the shy girl in the second row, who already seemed overwhelmed. The class dissolved into laughs as Anna tore up. Before Allison could respond, Ethan called out, pretending concern. "Careful, Miss Brooks. Guess you're not safe up here." Allison caught Anna's eye, her gut twisting. Ethan's challenge wasn't just to her authority. It was designed for show, to keep the classroom orbiting around him. The other students watched, uncertain, waiting to see what their new teacher would do. At lunch, in the fluorescent-lit staff room, Allison admitted her worries to Mrs. Smith, the veteran civics teacher. Smith only smiled softly. "They test you, especially him. This place eats up teachers who take it personally. But Allison, you notice the quiet ones, not just the loud ones. That matters. The following afternoon, Allison found a note in her desk drawer, a crude cartoon of herself, stick-thin and bug-eyed, falling. She turned around. She sensed there was something brewing, something she couldn't quite name. That morning, as she sipped her coffee and flipped through attendance slips, Mr. Davies, the vice principal, poked his head into her classroom. "Ms. Brooks," he said quietly, "do you have a second?" The worry in his eyes stopped her cold. In the main office, a stern-faced woman waited. Mrs. Turner, Ethan's mother, impeccably dressed and exuding an air of entitlement. Mr. Davies closed the door behind them. "Ms. Brooks," Mrs. Turner began, cool and rehearsed, "I'm concerned about your treatment of my son. Yesterday, Ethan came home very upset. He says you singled him out repeatedly and even accused him of cheating in front of the class." Allison's mind scrambled back. She remembered the discussion. Ethan's pointed jab, her measured reply. She'd never accused anyone, at least not out loud. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Turner," she replied, careful to keep her tone level. "Ethan participated in our discussion about justice. I addressed the topic, not any one student." Mrs. Turner's lips thinned. "That's not what Ethan felt, and several other parents have expressed concerns about a hostile classroom environment. I expect it not to continue." Mr. Davies shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing. Allison returned to her classroom, her hands trembling and jaw clenched. Later that day, chaos broke loose during homeroom. Anna, the shy sophomore, burst into tears as her backpack spilled open and a flood of crumpled worksheets rained out. Each one, Allison noticed, scrawled with childish, taunting scribbles. Ethan leaned back, arms folded, a picture of innocence. "Who did this, Anna?" Allison asked softly, but Anna only shook her head, shrinking further into herself. The other students looked anywhere but at the front of the room. The next blow landed just before the dismissal bell. Allison was called to the office again, this time Mrs. Fournier, the school secretary, holding up a half-crumpled piece of school letterhead. "Ms. Brooks, did you sign this late silent grief?" Allison clutched her lesson folder, pulse racing, as she navigated the labyrinthine halls toward the principal's office. The summons had come late Friday, a terse email. "Please report before first period." She told herself it was probably routine, but the fear coiled in her chest said otherwise. Outside the principal's door, she paused. Children's artwork, cheerful stick figures and paper hearts hung on the wall, oblivious to the grown-up anxieties inside. She smoothed her skirt, inhaled, and not. Principal Langley sat behind his oak desk, a fortress of neatly arranged files between them. He was joined by Mr. Davies and, to Allison's dismay, Mrs. Turner herself. Ethan's mother wore a look that straddled sympathy and disdain, her presence radiating unspoken authority. Allison tried to summon her confidence, but under that trio of stares, she felt impossibly young. "We're here to discuss some concerns that have come to light," Langley began, steepling his fingers. "There have been multiple complaints from parents regarding your classroom management and apparent targeting of certain students, most notably Ethan Turner." Mrs. Turner crossed her legs and met Allison's eyes directly. "My son has always enjoyed school, Miss Brooks, until now. He feels unwelcome. We're hearing similar things from other families." A pulse of frustration hardened in Allison's chest. She forced herself to keep her voice steady. "My goal is to make every student feel safe and challenged. I address disruptions as they arise, but I've never singled out anyone unfairly, certainly not Ethan." Langley's gaze slid to Mr. Davies, who shuffled some notes. "We've also received reports of forged late slips associated with your signature," Mr. Davies said. "Administration takes all allegations seriously. We need to determine whether procedures weren't followed or if your classroom is unstable." Mrs. Turner leaned in, voice cool as glass. "We all want what's best for our children and for Franklin High's reputation. I trust this matter will be resolved quickly for everyone's sake." Her gaze lingered on Allison, the way a judge might eye a defendant before passing sentence. Allison sat rigid, fighting the urge to defend herself more fiercely, but knowing any flash of anger, cheerful posters, gaudy and false. She ran trembling hands through her hair as the morning bell rang. Already she could sense the mood shifting. Students eyeing her more boldly, colleagues glancing away. The pressure was real, relentless. And suddenly she was no longer sure who, if anyone, was on her side. But she refused to give in to despair. In her chest, beneath the tightness, a small and stubborn spark endured. Maybe trust was a long arc. Maybe justice bent slowly. For now, she would keep showing up, despite everything. Alone in the storm. The week dragged on with a different kind of heaviness, as if a gray film coated every surface of Allison's world. Her colleagues' glances grew quieter, almost guilty, sympathy wrapped in distance. In the teacher's lounge, conversation seemed to hush when she entered, and the comfort of communal gripe sessions about budget cuts and rowdy teenagers evaporated. A few offered brief smiles, but most avoided her gaze, as if her current troubles might be contagious. Each afternoon, Allison laid out her next day's lessons on the living room rug, determined to prepare, to stay professional, to prove herself. But every night the apartment seemed emptier, the quiet louder. Sometimes she left her TV on at low volume, craving even the illusion of another voice. Her thoughts cycled endlessly between indignation and uncertainty. Should I have responded differently? Did I miss something everyone else sees in Ethan? Am I really meant for this job? She thought about her parents, now across the country, and the friends she'd left behind to chase this teaching dream. It felt so distant now, so fragile. Late Thursday, her younger sister Clara called, catching the waver in Allison's voice almost instantly. "Allie, what's wrong? You sound like you're underwater." Allison tried to laugh, but the sound was thin. "Thank you for caring about me." The small message gave Allison more strength than she expected. Those fragile gestures, Clara's call, Mrs. Smith's touch, Anna's thanks, were tiny spots of light inside the storm. Allison clung to them as a raft, refusing to let her sense of mission be buried beneath suspicion, pressure, and loneliness. On Friday, as the final bell rang, she stood looking at the empty classroom, sunlight tracing stripes along the floor. She could leave, she told herself, or she could stay and fight for what she believed teaching was supposed to be. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them away. Tomorrow she'd return. She wasn't done. Not yet. A ray of hope. Monday dawned after a weekend of sleepless tossing and anxious preparation. Still, Allison arrived early, determined not to show the fatigue settled beneath her eyes. The air in her classroom felt lighter somehow, as if the storm had eased just enough to let a shaft of sunlight in. She took a deep breath, arranged the chairs in a semicircle, and set out a pile of blank index cards and colored markers. Today's lesson would be different. When the students entered, they paused, surprised by the change of order. For the first time in days, Allison caught a glimpse of curiosity behind their expressions, wary but unmistakable. Even Ethan hesitated, sliding into his usual seat with a look that was more interested than hostile. "I want to try something new," Allison announced. "Today, before we get to our regular lesson, I want each of you to write down something you wish your teachers knew about you. It can be anything: a hope, a worry, something you're proud of, or something you struggle with. No names required unless you want to share." A hush fell. Allison sensed resistance at first. A few eyes rolled and some students started to doodle. But gradually, pencils scratched paper, tension loosening around the room. When everyone finished, Allison asked for volunteers to share. There was an awkward silence. Then Anna, twisting a bracelet on her wrist, spoke up. "My dad lost his job. It's been hard." Shrug. After the bell, Anna lingered. "I think it helped," she whispered. "People looked at each other for real today." Allison smiled, feeling her own worries shift. The harsh spotlight of doubt hadn't disappeared, but now there was another kind of illumination. A tentative, fragile hope. That afternoon, as Allison packed up, she found herself humming, her reflection in the window softer and steadier than it had been in weeks. Maybe the storm wasn't over, but she had weathered its worst. In the heart of that battered old classroom, something was growing, slowly but unmistakably, between herself and her students. A connection. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, and for the first time in a long while, Allison let herself believe in her place at Franklin High. There was work ahead, but she would face it, not alone, but as part of a community finally beginning, just a little, to open its doors. The turning point. By the second week of April, the halls of Franklin High glimmered with spring light. Trees outside the windows fluttered with new green, and the persistent, raw chill of winter had finally disappeared. Inside, something had shifted too, subtle at first, but unmistakable. Allison returned Mr. Langley's clipboard and observation forms with a steady hand. The classroom evaluations had come and gone. The presence of the principal and Mr. Davies, perched temporarily in the back, had been less terrifying than she'd expected. Instead of withering under scrutiny, Allison found herself steadied by it. She had a job to do, and she did it, with patient authority, gentle humor, and an honesty that felt earned by these last months. One afternoon, as the students filed out, Principal Langley stayed behind. He tapped the desk twice and nodded. "I've seen growth here, Ms. Brooks," he said, meeting her eyes. "Sometimes the hardest classes bring out the best in us. Keep going." The words stayed with her, fueling a deeper resolve. That same week, Allison rolled out a new group project. Team debates on real-world issues, topics the student broke out. Real, easy laughter that for the first time felt shared. Some problems remained. Parents still called or emailed complaints some days, and Anna flinched at loud noises. But the balance of power in the classroom had changed. The students, sensing Allison's new confidence, stopped testing every line. When Mrs. Smith stopped in one afternoon and asked Anna how she liked English this semester, Anna beamed. "Ms. Brooks doesn't quit on us when it gets bad. She just makes us talk about it." The endorsement meant more than any observation form ever could. That Friday, as Allison prepared to leave, she found a card tucked into her bag. On it, Ethan had written in messy, slanted handwriting, "Thanks for not giving up on us, especially me." Allison's eyes stung. She tucked the card away, carrying it like a badge. She exhaled at last, understanding the fragile alchemy of teaching. How faith, patience, and hope could transform even the most stubborn resistance into trust. As the street lights flickered on outside, Allison lingered at her open window, listening to the laughter of students heading home in the evening air. Spring pressed against the world, insistent and new. For the first time, she believed this turning point might last. The quiet victory. Finals season arrived with little fanfare but plenty of tension, winding the school tighter with every passing day. The students at Franklin High became a hive of anxious whispers and frenzied review sessions. Allison could sense it all, the sharp edge of worry behind even the boldest questions, the relief that fluttered when she announced a pop quiz was only practice. Gone were the open acts of defiance and calculated silence that had once filled her classroom. In their place, she saw students lean in, check their understanding, even hedge their complaints with soft jokes. Anna started raising her hand regularly, asking specific questions about style and word choice. Lexi cornered Allison after class to ask about college essay prompts. Ethan, too, had changed. Day, Principal Langley stopped by with the quarterly reports. His visit was brief, but his approval was unmistakable.
"We're seeing improvement all around, Miss Brooks," he said. "The students are engaged. Whatever you're doing, keep at it."
Allison felt a quiet pride take root in her chest, modest but real. Progress here wasn't measured in grand gestures or public praise, but in small shifts, in the calm that had settled over her classroom. The worst storms had passed, leaving the quiet possibility of growth in their wake. On the last day before finals, her students surprised her. They pulled together to buy her a card and a miniature potted plant, the leaves glossy with new life. "It's just so you remember us next year," Lexi announced, grinning. Anna blushed and smiled. Even Ethan shrugged, trying not to look pleased. Allison's throat tightened as she read the signatures and messages. Words like "thank you" and "you never gave up on us" jostled with doodles and inside jokes. She realized that, without fanfare, she'd become exactly the teacher she'd wanted to be. Not infallible, but present, steady, and able to listen even when things seemed hopeless. As the students trickled out for the summer, the room turned golden, silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioner. Allison closed her eyes, breathed in the clean, sun-bright air, and let her shoulders drop. Victory, she thought, could be this quiet, this real. And as she tended to the little plant, a symbol of something hard-won and hopeful, she allowed herself to dream of next September and all the new beginnings it would bring. Looking back, moving forward. The building was nearly empty now. The last locker slammed shut, echoing through halls stripped of their posters and end-of-year announcements. Boxes of graded papers and classroom odds and ends lined the corridor, like silent witnesses to another year's passing. Allison sat quietly at her desk, hands folded around a mug of lukewarm coffee. The soft, mid-June light painted her classroom in delicate gold, illuminating the empty seats, each one holding a memory. Anna's tentative questions, Lexi's laughter, Ethan's slow and uncertain transformation. It was as if the room held its breath, waiting for next year's stories to begin. She glanced down at the thank you card.
and set the phone aside, heart lighter. Packing up, she found herself lingering over Ethan's essay on trust, Anna's clumsy bouquet of wildflowers pressed in a notebook, the bright sparkly pen Lexi had loaned her and insisted Allison keep. Each item was a small thread in the tapestry of her first truly hard year. Before she left, she walked the empty rows one last time, fingers drifting across desktops, pausing at the window to watch the sun-dappled courtyard below. The world felt full of possibility, humming with a special kind of hope reserved for new beginnings. On her way out, Allison ran into Mrs. Smith in the faculty lounge. The older woman gave her a sly smile. "It gets easier, you know. Some years just hurt, but they change you for the better." Allison met her gaze and returned the smile. "I can't imagine not coming back," she said. Mrs. Smith laughed and patted her shoulder. "That's how you know you belong here." Outside, the breeze was warm and gentle, bending the grass as Allison locked her classroom door. She tucked the thank you card and tiny plant under her arm, savoring the quiet pride of survival and success. Ahead awaited empty lesson plans, unwritten stories, faces she hadn't yet met, and this time she welcomed it all. Franklin High loomed behind her, red bricks glowing in the sun. Allison glanced back once, then stepped forward, ready, at last, for whatever came next. New beginnings, summer drifted by in slow golden waves. The rhythm of early mornings and late nights had faded into afternoons spent in quiet coffee shops, evenings on the cracked balcony with a book, and long rambling calls with Clara. At first, Allison was restless. She caught herself listening for the sound of school bells or the hurried footsteps of students, ghosts of a routine that had etched itself into her bones. But the city in summer had its own magic. Unhurried walks through the bustling farmers' market, laughter shared with new friends, the solace of empty parks. Allison jotted down lesson ideas on napkins, scrapped whole units, and dreamed up fresh ones. She reread Ethan's essay, Anna's note, and Lexi's. Students filtered in, a mix of familiar faces and brand new ones. Anna entered, more confident, waving before settling at her desk. Lexi dropped by with a grin and a chatter about summer soccer camp. Even Ethan strode in, a little taller, his old swagger softened into genuine curiosity and warmth. A new group of students trickled in, quiet, watching, uncertain. Allison caught their eyes and smiled, her own nerves replaced by empathy and resolve. She understood now. Every first day held the promise of transformation, for her and for them. When the bell rang, Allison closed the door and turned to the class. Sunlight glittered on the whiteboard as she spoke. "Welcome. There's so much we'll learn together this year. And no matter where we start or how hard things get, we keep moving forward. That's what matters. I'm glad you're here." A hush settled, and in it bloomed 1,000 possibilities. Missteps and milestones, difficulties and delights. Allison stood at the front of her classroom, steady and open, ready for every lesson ahead. Outside, the season shifted toward autumn, leaves spinning in the morning light. And inside, the world, her world, began again. Echoes and reflections. October descended like a hush, its evenings flushed with amber light and the faintest chill on the morning air. The rhythm of school had returned, the shuffling of notebooks, laughter in crowded hallways, a familiar chorus of voices that now, to Allison, felt like home. The novelty of the new year had faded, replaced by the steady hum of learning and growth. With every passing week, Allison noticed more. The wary way some students clung to their seats during difficult discussions, others opening up with stories or bright questions. She'd expected challenges, but the weight of last year no longer pressed so heavily on her shoulders. Instead, she found strength in small victories: a hesitant hand raised, a tough student staying after class to talk, a shy smile flickering over a test marked "much improved." One Thursday afternoon, as leaves tumbled in lazy Be Real. After school, Allison joined her colleagues at the local cafe, an anchor of community she'd once felt too nervous to visit. Over coffee and old vinyl tunes, Mrs. Smith recounted stories of classes long gone, Mr. Davies grumbled about grading, and even Principal Langley dropped by with good-natured jokes about the district's latest innovation. It was, she realized, another miracle. How pain and struggle could become stories, how uncertainty could transform into laughter. She belonged to this constellation of teachers now, each one marked by seasons of trial and hope, their stories winding together in the service of students who would one day move on and leave echoes behind. That evening, Allison walked home beneath trees alight with crimson and gold, the city's early autumn wind tugging at her hair. The stars emerged, shy at first, above the rooftops. She squeezed the tiny potted plant from last year's class, a living testament to growth, now sitting on her kitchen sill. Alone, Allison opened her journal and wrote a single, resonant sentence. Sometimes, the echoes of what you give away come back in quieter, truer ways. She smiled, knowing tomorrow would bring more questions, challenges, and restless hearts, but also new beginnings, hidden in each ordinary day. And as she drifted to sleep, her dreams shimmered with the quiet, bright possibility of every lesson still to come. Seasons of change. By mid-November, Franklin High was a swirl of crisp air, drifting leaves, and anticipation. The first hints of winter crept through cracked windows. Allison watched her students cocoon themselves in sweaters and scarves, their energy shifting restlessly as exams approached. The excitement of new beginnings had softened, replaced by a steady routine, a rhythm orchestrated by bell schedules and the quiet pulse of shared experience. Allison found herself reflecting more often on her students' progress, on her own evolution. The classroom had become a second home, filled with laughter, disagreements, and the hush of collective thought. Some days were battles, a biting remark, an unfinished assignment. A student's eyes shimmered, hope flickering where fear had lived. Thanksgiving drew nearer, bringing with it projects on gratitude and family history. Allison invited her students to write letters, to themselves, to someone they'd lost, or someone they wanted to thank. Many were simple. Some were strikingly brave. Ethan's was addressed to his younger self, urging him not to close off after failure. Lexi wrote to her grandmother, promising to keep the family traditions alive. Anna's was a quiet confession of fear and hope, folded twice before she placed it in Allison's hands, with a whispered, "Thank you for believing I could." The letters became Allison's secret treasure, each one a testament to something larger than any lesson plan. Transformation, trust, the slow building of confidence. On the last day before break, the class shared cocoa and laughter, stories drifting like snowflakes. For a moment, the past faded, the rocky beginnings, the uncertainty, and there was only the warmth of the present, the closeness of shared struggle and small joys. As the students filed out, Ethan paused at the door and gave a rare, genuine smile. "See you after Thanksgiving, Miss Brooks." There was promise in his voice, and a future she no longer doubted. Alone in the golden, quiet room, Allison stood by the window, watching the season change. The first flurries of snow dusted the playground, a preview of winter's hush, temporary, beautiful, a reminder of how far they had all come. In that quiet, Allison felt it clearly. Change wasn't always sudden or easy, but it came all the same, gentle as snow and sure as spring.